Welcome to Beyond the Clinic, the podcast for health professionals ready to transform their expertise into innovative income streams that extend beyond the traditional clinic model. I'm Sarah Armand-Bushell. I'm a registered dietitian and certified business coach and proud owner of 2 successful online businesses. I understand the leap from the security of a regular salary can feel intimidating because I've been there too. But it doesn't have to be scary, and you do not have to do this alone. Here you'll learn tangible strategies to accelerate your business growth. So if you're dreaming of using your expertise to create impact and a life of freedom, then you're in the right place. Hello, everybody. I am really excited to invite my friend and colleague, Jasmine Edwards, along onto the podcast today because Jasmine is a freelance copywriter and content strategist, and she helps business owners find the right words to connect with their audience and sell their services and tell their story. She's got a really deep understanding of marketing strategies, of consumer psychology and of storytelling. And so she knows exactly how to make your words work harder for your business. So with that said, welcome along, Jasmine. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, and we first met probably, I don't know, two and a bit years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. I'll let everybody in on a little secret that Jasmine used to write some of my content for me in both the Children's Nutritionist and in this business as well. So I really know how great you are at copywriting. So that's why I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure writing your content. Really enjoyed writing it for you.
And I think what a lot of healthcare professionals might not know is that actually you're not a healthcare professional and you don't necessarily need to be a healthcare professional, and you still were able to write great social media content. You helped me with some sales pages, you helped me with some emails, and it all still resonated. For anybody listening who's thinking, they don't understand anything about what I do in my business, you don't actually need to if you have the right person. So definitely vouch for that. I think probably one of the biggest problems a lot of people have, and that's when they feel really overwhelmed with their content creation. So lots of people say that they feel like they're constantly creating social media posts, putting blogs up, putting social media posts up, and not getting anywhere with it really. So I'd love to know from your perspective, Jasmine, what do you think is usually the root of that overwhelm from your perspective as a copywriter and as a marketing strategist?
I think, firstly, content overwhelm is super common. I think it's something that most business owners struggle with. So you're definitely not alone if you do struggle with feeling overwhelmed with what to be posting on social media. I think it ultimately comes down to lack of sort of clarity and strategy. So a lot of health professionals, they're amazing at what they do. They have all the expertise and skills to help so many people, but it's then translating that into content that gets clients that really sort of trips them up. So I think what happens a lot is people end up winging it with their content and posting for the sake of posting because they know they need to be visible. And that ends up causing, I think, more overwhelm because they're spending all this time creating content and it's not getting results, and they feel like they're just repeating this cycle and that they can't get out of. So I think taking a step back would be my best advice. And I think the 3 main pieces of advice I would give someone with content overwhelm is firstly to think, who am I really speaking to and what do they really need? And almost imagine your potential client is in a room with you. And that helps to shift the energy from what should I post today? I need to get a post out today, to how can I really serve here? And how can I really help someone today? Secondly, I would always make sure you're trying to bring it back to a purpose. So what is the purpose behind the post? Again, rather than just sort of winging it. So for example, client win posts are always your gold because they really show that credibility, build authority, build that trust, which is what you really want to be doing with your content. So I think really thinking, what is the purpose behind this post? That will help reduce the overwhelm because you're thinking more about your content from a strategic perspective. And then thirdly, content pillars. So Having your core themes or the things you talk about in your content can really help to reduce that overwhelm, because then you have somewhere that you can go where you know these are my foundations, these are the things that I talk about in my content that really just give you a structure and that consistency and cohesion with your content. So I think essentially it's just stepping back and looking at your foundations, always thinking what's the purpose behind the post, but also thinking about your audience and what it is that they really need to hear. I think those would be my three biggest pieces of advice for content overwhelm.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just dig into that piece about content pillars there, because I think sometimes I think that's a little bit of marketing jargon in a way, isn't it? So let's just talk about what they actually are. So the way I tend to look at content pillars is these are the things that you either are already known for or want to be known for if you're just getting started, but they kind of need to all link together, so it's all part of the same bigger topic, I guess. And the other thing I often see, a mistake that people make with content pillars, is they might have a content pillar that doesn't actually lead anywhere. So they don't actually have a service or an offer or anything that leads to it. And I think the classic one for particularly for dietitians is they might share recipes, but then they don't have any offers that involve recipes. That's kind of my understanding of content pillars. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. You've hit the nail on the head there. I think it is definitely a lot more simple than people think when they hear content pillars. It is essentially just those core themes that you talk about and the things you want to be known for. And when someone lands on your profile, whether it's your Instagram or Facebook, wherever you typically post, you ideally want someone to immediately understand this is how this person can help me. These are the key areas they can help me with. So it's really just giving your content that structure and cohesion and making sure you're not getting sort of lost in what you're talking about. And you're so right. You always want to link it back to what you're selling ultimately, so you can lead people somewhere with your content and give them a next step. So for an example, as a copywriter, say, my pillars might be selling through content. Once I have that content pillar, I can then go one level deeper. So selling through email or selling through IG. And then this is great because it just gives you so many ideas once you branch out from those content pillars. But yeah, always making sure that there is a next step in your content would be super, super important. So making sure you're not just thinking of content pillars in terms of what can I do or how can I help people, but how do they also relate to what I'm selling? And I think using ChatGPT is also a smart move with this, because a lot of people can think, oh, I know so much, I can help people with so many different angles. Asking ChatGPT, I am insert niche, I help people with insert audience, and as well giving ChatGPT as much info as possible, and then asking it to create 3 to 5 content pillars based on my business, industry, and audience, and then just seeing what it comes up with to help get you started.
Yeah, to give me some ideas. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said 3 to 5 content pillars there, because in the back of my mind, I thought, do people know how many content pillars you should have? So yeah, so I have 3 in the children's nutritionist, and that works really well for me. And I have 5 in this business, and I think that works well as well. So you don't need to have loads and loads of different topics to talk about there. But let's just talk about ChatGPT and AI, because I think that's a really interesting one, particularly for people in your profession as copywriters, because it's almost like your nemesis. This thing has come out that's, started to take over anything that's that traditionally we would have outsourced to a copywriter to write for you. How has that impacted in your business? And actually, is there still a role for a copywriter? I'm sure you can tell me there is.
Yeah, I think ChatGPT is a great tool, and I definitely recommend business owners using it because it is super useful. It can save so much time, especially when it comes to thinking of ideas and things like that, which I think can be the biggest hurdle for a lot of people, is just having that, staring at the blank screen, at the blinking cursor, and just not knowing where to start. So it can really just help get that ball rolling. I like to say lead with lead with heart, expand with AI. A lot of people are becoming more aware, I think, of content that looks very AI. So it's just about being clever with it, really.
Yes.
Making sure your voice isn't getting lost, of course. I use it in my business for sort of, ideas and things like that. Whenever I'm, even as a copywriter, if I run a little dry on ideas, I just need a little sort of refresh, then I'll head to ChatGPT now and then. But I think it's just most important to not let your voice get lost within it.
Yeah.
I think giving it as much information as you can as well, because you'll only get, ChatGPT will only give you what you can sort of give it, if you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, that's true.
The more you can give it, the better. But I think a lot of people are aware that they need to be sort of still thinking about their content more deeply than just relying on ChatGPT. But yeah, it's definitely taking over, and it'll be interesting where it is in the next few years, I think, the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. So I use it every single day in my business, and I have Sarah AI, which is essentially all of my sort of business coaching, mindset coaching. All of the knowledge that I've got put into the back of it, and sort of frameworks and templates and things. And my clients love it. They absolutely love it. It's like having their business coach in their back pocket, 24/7. And you're right, it is a great bouncing off point for ideas. But the way I use ChatGPT is I'll use it for ideation. So I'll definitely use it to get those ideas in the first place. And then might ask it to like write a post maybe. And after that, I then go in and refine it. I quite often find that it doesn't really have the level of specificity that I want it to have when I'm talking about my ideal client. One of the things that we'll talk about this in a minute, actually, but one of the things that I think we all need to be doing as healthcare professionals is making our readers feel seen and heard and understood in our content. And I think the more specificity and relatability that you can include in your content, the better. So I think ChatGPT can almost help you identify what those things are, but then you still have to add the bit of polish to get it across. And you mentioned also there a little bit about brand voice as well. So one of the very first exercises that I do with my clients is to get them to create what we call as a linguistic analysis, so that the AI understands their speaking voice, not necessarily their writing voice, because their writing voice is often quite scientific, particularly because we're all like work with a lot of evidence-based research, that kind of stuff, talking it and getting it to understand our spoken voice and recreating that in our social media content. And that has a massive impact in terms of the quality of the posts that we produce. Yeah.
I think that's really powerful because people buy from people. So if you can really make sure your voice comes across in your content and it's that familiar voice, that's going to really attract people in. But ChatGPT can really dilute that. So if you can make sure that you're sort of training ChatGPT to understand your voice, then it's going to be so much more powerful for your business. And I know you mentioned about sort of how ChatGPT can't quite grasp those specificities. So I think a really good point there would be to encourage ChatGPT to go deeper with your ideal client. So asking it things like, what are my ideal or my audience's internal thoughts? What's keeping them up at night? What emotions are they feeling as a result of their struggles or pain points? What does a typical day in their life look like? And that's going to help ChatGPT create a more specific and visual picture of your ideal client and sort of what exactly they're struggling with.
Yeah.
Can really help with content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly in healthcare, a lot of the stuff that we talk about or we help people with is the intangibles. So when you can add that level of like you say, that you talk about the pain points and the problems that people have, but actually how that impacts them on their day-to-day life, what that looks like on the outside, that helps turn that intangible into something tangible. And that's how people feel seen and heard and understood, isn't it?
Definitely. I think that's a big thing that people struggle with is that tangible end result of how they help people as well, which is one of the most important things to consider when you're creating your sales page content or your social media or your emails, is always bringing it back to what is the end result that I help people with here.
Yeah.
And something you can play around with ChatGPT to help you with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit there about ideal client a couple of times. So again, another sort of marketing bit of lingo that we've just dropped into the conversation, and lots of people will understand ideal client because it's quite a common bit of marketing lingo, isn't it? But a lot of people, I think, particularly in healthcare, feel quite nervous about having one ideal client or, in effect, niching right down. What are your thoughts on that in terms of how you can connect with ideal clients or dream clients, let's say, and essentially get more clients and grow your business?
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people are nervous about niching because people worry, am I limiting myself or am I closing doors on potential clients? But it is actually the opposite a lot of the time. And you'll find when you niche your content or creating your content becomes so much easier and so much more effective as well. Because you've probably heard the saying, if you're speaking to everyone, you're actually speaking to no one and you're just sort of diluting your message and it's becoming far too broad. So I think the more you can get really specific on who exactly you help, the better your content will be and the more of the right clients will find you. For an example, if you're in the health industry and you create a post on improving your relationship with food, that could apply to pretty much anyone. Whereas I've recently done work for someone who helps people with polycystic kidney disease, and content then around sort of if you've been newly diagnosed with PKD and you're feeling overwhelmed with what you can eat, what you can't eat, here's where to start. So that's a lot more powerful than here's how to improve your relationship with food, that could apply to absolutely anyone, just as an example. But I think really when you're creating your content, you want people to be able to think, that's me, that person completely gets me, they've got inside my head, they know exactly how I'm feeling. And the best way to do that a lot of the time is to have a specific niche and know exactly who you're talking to and have a really specific person that you're talking to. That I think can create a huge shift in your content and just make it so much more powerful and easier for you to create as well. When you're using tools like ChatGPT as well, ChatGPT will be able to work harder for you because it has a clearer picture of who exactly you're targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the examples I often use to describe niche is say you were a weight management dietitian and you decided that you help women in their 30s lose weight. You would think that's quite niche, but actually, if you think about it, you might have a woman in her 30s who's preparing for her wedding. So she's going to have a very different, she wants to look gorgeous in her dress. She wants to look like stunning walking down the aisle. That's her motivation. The next woman in their 30s who wants to lose weight might be a mum of two who's really busy running around the place and eating leftover fish fingers from her kids' plates, And then the third one might be an executive, someone who's working their way up, maybe they're trained as a lawyer or something like that, and they're working, 60, 80 hours a week, and she wants to lose weight. So when you can be specific in terms of the person and what's going on in their day-to-day lives, your content is going to reflect that. So you can see straight away that if you were trying to target that lawyer, for example, who's really, really busy, if you start you're not going to attract, the bride or the mum of two. So the niche is way more than the speciality and way more than the age group within the speciality. It's the actual person, isn't it? And what is happening in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, that's a really, really great example. I love that. I think a lot of people think it's too big of a jump and it's going to be too scary to niche down and they can't then go back. But you can always test niches. And if it doesn't feel right, you can, try a different niche. You don't have to once you've decided on a niche, you're not sort of stuck with that niche forever. So it's always worth testing, even if you're sort of in that phase where you're not sure or you're just feeling like it's going to limit you in any way. It's definitely worth testing and sort of going from there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm a perfect example of that because when I first took my nutrition business online, so beforehand it was like a pediatric general clinic, I took it online and knew about niching. So I went into baby weaning. I did that for a couple of years, but I didn't love it and I didn't make enough money. So then I was like, okay, what can I do here to make this, even better? And so I pivoted and then I found what people will actually spend money for, and that then became a business rather than something I felt like I was constantly slogging at all the time. So let's change tack slightly and talk about the types of content that you might want to create. Maybe let's focus on social media actually. So the types of social media content that you might want to create. So one of the things that I noticed with just about everybody I've worked with over the years, is that we're really great at tips and advice. We give out loads and loads of tips and advice. And of course, I know, and you probably know as well, that education alone isn't enough in order to bring in clients. So I'd love for your take on that and some advice on what people should be doing differently.
So there's loads of different types of content. As you say, you've got your educational content, your story-based content, your sales-based content. So you're definitely right. I noticed the same thing. A lot of the time, people are posting lots of valuable content, the tips, the tricks, the educational posts. And it's definitely worth saying there's nothing wrong with this kind of content. It's great to be posting because it shows that you know your stuff. It shows you're the expert, and people love those quick wins. You want your content to be sort of bingeable, and you want people to come back and want to see more. So it's great to post that kind of content, but it's really important to be mindful that you aren't going to attract clients from that kind of content alone, as you say. So I would really encourage people to start posting more what I call action driving content. So that could be, for example, client win posts. I always say client win posts are your gold, really showing that A to B journey to show you can actually get results. Things as well like sharing more about the consequences of staying where they are. That kind of language is sort of warming them up to your paid offers, talking about sort of your values behind the scenes of what it's like to work with you. So it doesn't have to be super salesy, just things that will sort of move them towards your offers, taking them from sort of, oh, that's a nice bit of free value, to really understanding why they need to work with you and why they should invest. So I think really encouraging you to think about your own customer journey as well when you've invested in, say, a business coach, thinking, what was it that made me want to invest? I doubt it was a top tips post that made you want to invest. It was likely, maybe a client win that they posted or a specific email that really made you sort of feel connected and aligned with the way they work, something along those lines. So really thinking that one level deeper about your content. I think a lot of people post a lot of value because they just want to help people,
Yeah,
especially in the health
that's
space.
exactly what it is. It comes from a place of goodness. We've all got massive hearts and we all want to help people. Yeah.
Definitely. I think especially in the health and wellness space. So I think it's just that shift from, yes, posting the valuable content, but also posting more of the action driving content that's going to make people want to work with you, because people won't pay for what they've already got for free. That's something to remember. So always sort of warming them up and leading them to your offers with more content that's sort of, handling objections even. There's so many different types of action driving content, but client wins are definitely one to focus on.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Yeah. And I often think like your tips and advice are great for that visibility stuff. So getting in front of new audiences, for stopping the scroll and making people say, oh, yeah, that's really interesting, that post that I've just seen. But we've got to do something with those people, haven't we, to move them along to want to work with us. So, and the other thing I often find about the tips and advice pieces is, and I think, again, it comes from a place of wanting to help, is we give too much. So it's like one tip, one micro tip in a post, not the whole story. And quite often, if you can look at one post that someone's created like that, and you could probably create 10 posts from that. So keep it really small and really tangible. And someone once said to me that if someone can, by the time they've read the end of the post, if they can have had their win by the time they've got to the end of it, that's what you want. You don't want them to have to go away and implement something or keep a diary for 3 days or, anything like that. It has to be something where they get an immediate win.
Definitely. I think especially because attention spans are so short these days.
Yeah.
If you've got a really long carousel of, 10 or more slides, people are just going to scroll right past. So you really want that quick win, as you say, to really capture people so they can get that win immediately. I think that's what people like, isn't it? Especially when there's so much out there.
Yes.
They want to be able to read something really quick, grab a win really quick and move on. People, especially as attention spans are so short these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So once we've captured these people's attention and we're trying to move them along the journey, that's where storytelling can really help, can't it? Because that can help turn that person who's literally just discovered us to like us, to begin to trust us, to know a little bit about what goes on in our world. Talk a little bit about storytelling, because I know you're really good at that.
Definitely. I love doing story content. I think it's my favorite type of content to write. Trust, as you say, is such a big factor these days, especially in a world of, ChatGPT and all the rest of it. So really building trust through stories can be super, super powerful for your content. So always think, what stories do I have? What personal stories do I have that my ideal client would relate to? So you can have your own personal stories, but also stories through your clients. So a lot of the time when people post client wins, for example, they just tend to put the screenshot testimonial and celebrating insert name. But really, I'd encourage you to go that level deeper and show the story and transformation of that client win. So people can really be on that journey and sort of understand that A to B transformation. So A, where they were before they joined you, and B, where they were sort of at the end of working with you, and really sharing those stepping stones. Story content is probably the best type of content to be creating. I do find that people struggle with it because they find it hard to talk about themselves a lot of the time, and that's the one thing that holds them back. But I'd really encourage you to just try and break down those walls and sort of share a little bit more about your story and as well client wins, because it is all about that trust building, and people buy from people. So they really want to sort of, a lot of the time, people want to learn more about the person behind the brand.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And with storytelling, it's not like you don't just have to share your life story. You don't have to have had some trauma that you're recovering from, and you don't even have to have been your ideal client before. I think, some of this big sort of business coaches out there will talk about your experience of when you were your ideal client. But for a lot of people in healthcare, that's not the reason why they became a healthcare professional. So I often think it doesn't have to be like that kind of story. It can be something really, really small, can't it? And that's where you sort of like behind the scenes type of content can come in, because it can be a really short story about, I could do a story about what I do to prepare for guests coming on the podcast, that kind of thing. Or I think another story that we've all got is our reason for why we decided to train as a dietitian, or the reason why we decided to set up our own businesses rather than work for somebody else. So those sort of like founder stories, they're all really great, aren't they?
Definitely. I think there's so many avenues you can go down with stories. Like you say, even that behind the scenes, if you think, oh, I've got no stories to share, just something that came up for you last week or something you're thinking about in the shower this morning, and sort of bringing that to life in your content. People are quite nosy and they like to see what's going on in your life. So the more you can share about your day-to-day life and relate that back, of course, to your business and how you can help people, the better.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. People are nosy, because it's so true. It really is true. They just like to know what other people do, particularly if it's someone who they're thinking about working with. They want to know the actual human, don't they? The person behind the business.
Definitely. I think especially with ChatGPT on the rise, it's almost, if it's not used correctly, it can kind of dehumanize a brand very quickly and very easily. So if you're sharing more of that personal side, it can really help to just create more of a connection with your audience.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, let's bring this back full circle. We started talking about burnout at the start and content overwhelm and feeling totally fed up with it. I just wonder, have you got any strategies or systems or top tips that you can give to people to help them stay consistent without it being constant and taken over their whole life?
I would say having some kind of content bank, which a lot of people think, oh, that's going to take so much time, but it will save you so much time in the long run. So there are loads of tools, like Trello is really good and quite simple to use. Asana is quite good, but if you're not very techy, not that you have to be techy at all to use those
No, no.
tools, they're very simple, but even a simple spreadsheet can do the job. Just having somewhere to go, to have somewhere where you can store your content and sort of content that's worked particularly well. You can even sort of color code the content that's performed really well. So, you can repurpose that or sort of use it again, but change it slightly. So I would really recommend just having one place to map out all your ideas. So you've got everything there. So when you are in that content rut and you're just not knowing where to start, you've always got somewhere to go so that you're not leaving it, a week, 2 weeks, and you've not posted because you've just not had time or the capacity to even think. So you've always got somewhere to go to sort of give you somewhere to start.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's gold. Like, 'cause that's exactly what I have for both businesses, as you know, because you helped me set them up in the first place. But yeah, so I've got like all of my posts listed essentially, and then I've flagged the ones that perform particularly well. And it's actually been really, really helpful for me in the children's nutritionist because I've been focused this year on focus in this business coaching business, growing this business. When I haven't had time to post, I've gone, okay, my minimum is 3 posts a week. I don't drop into that because I know you can't grow unless you're posting 3 to 5 times a week. So I'll go over there and I go, okay, what performed really well that I haven't used for 3 to 4 months? And I just grab one and repost it. And I might, if I look at it, I think, you know what, I might change it up a little bit. Maybe I'll change the background color of the graphic, or I might record a really quick reel instead of it being a carousel, or I might just post it as it is if I really don't have the time. And it's been fine. I've still got clients. I've still got the way that business is set up is it's all based on funnels. So I still have people coming into the funnels, and then the funnel does its job and clients come out the other end, but it's just allowed me that breathing space to be able to focus my attention elsewhere. So I agree, having that content bank is super helpful. And then the other thing that I do is I actually batch my content once a week. I used to do it once a month, and that was great. But then I found actually, no, I needed to be on top of it, because if you do it a month ago, I couldn't remember exactly what I'd done and where I was focusing. And although I had my underlying sort of strategic goal of what I was trying to promote or sell or whatever, I found that doing it once a week was really helpful. So now I do it on Friday. I just go into my bank on a Friday, work out what I need to post for next week. What am I promoting? How do my, like you say, what do my ideal clients need to hear from me this week? Tapping into those pain points, really reflecting how that feels in their everyday life and creating content based on that. And then the call to action is usually an entry point to one of my funnels. And that works really well for me, because if I just do it once a week on a Friday, that's just like 3 posts. It's easy.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really great piece of advice because if you do try and batch a month's worth, it can feel quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
And if you only give yourself, you say, okay, I only need to do 3 or 4 posts just for next week, that feels a lot more manageable. And I think it's almost a lot of pressure to put on yourself to create a month's worth of content you know, in the space of just a few hours. Yeah, we definitely, I think, batch creating in week by week is a great piece of advice, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me. And again, it goes against what a lot of the other gurus tell you about batching everything and then you don't have to do it again. But actually, I found that I needed to do it more frequently. And I guess the other thing that we haven't mentioned really is that, I think we have actually, touching on the fact that every post needs to have a purpose. What's the intention behind that post? And, yes, it needs to relate to people so that they feel seen and heard, but actually, is it to get discovered by new audiences? Is it that visibility type of thing? Is it to connect with the people who you've already got and move them further along that journey? Is it to invite them to download something so that they become an email subscriber, or actually is it to sell something? So I think having that sort of in the back of your mind, what's the actual intention behind this post, is really helpful to just hold as well.
Because I think a lot of people, when it comes to posting, it becomes almost like a tick box exercise where they think, oh, I know I need to be
Yeah,
posting because I need to be visible. So
yeah.
just anything will go out and it'll just kind of be throwing spaghetti at the wall and just sort of, if it works, it works. Whereas if you're really thinking, like you say, what is the intention behind the post? Am I trying to build trust with my clients who are already here? Am I sort of inviting new people into my world? Am I sort of wanting to share a bit more about my values and what it's like to work with me? So just thinking about all the different types of content and different purposes behind content and really sort of reverse engineering and then thinking, well, what stories have I got to share? What client wins have I got to share? what values could I talk about? And just sort of going that one level deeper rather than just asking ChatGPT for a post and that'll do, copy and paste, the post is done for today.
Yeah, yeah,
Really
definitely.
thinking that one layer deeper. And I think your engagement and results overall from content will improve from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jasmine, I know that you've got a freebie because I've downloaded it and it's very good. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and how people can benefit from it?
Definitely, yes. So I have it's essentially 30 days of content ideas with what we've mentioned today. So really thinking about the purpose behind the post. So you've not just got 30 sort of random ideas, but ideas that will really help you to build credibility, build that authority, and sort of build trust with your audience, and just some sort of prompts to get you going with your content. So there's some on there, I think, for sort of client wins. So if you have a client win, but you're not really sure how to create a post around it and you just don't know where to start, it can help you to sort of just get a bit of a start with that post and sort of know sort of how to open the post and things like that. A few hooks and prompts in there, which will hopefully be useful.
Yeah, brilliant. So I definitely encourage everyone to download that. And finally, where can people connect with you if they want to learn a bit more?
So my Instagram is copy by Jazz, JAS.
Brilliant. Okay. And I'll put the direct link to that in the show notes as well. So everybody's got it. Thank you so much for your time, Jasmine, today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And I hope everyone's taken lots and lots of really useful nuggets of information away from our chat today. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's been super fun. I've enjoyed it.
Pleasure. That's it for another week. Thank you so much for joining me as we explore the abundance of strategies to help you recapture that feeling of possibility and excitement as you drive your business forwards and beyond the clinic room. If you found today's episode inspirational, then don't forget to like and subscribe to the show to stay in the loop for more valuable advice that I'm going to be sharing each week. If you want to be the first to hear about new episode releases, news and ways that I can support your business growth, then please don't forget to check out the links in the show notes, and you can also connect with me from there. Don't keep me a secret. I would be delighted if you left a review and shared this podcast with your colleagues. Until next time, bye for now.